أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم ففهمناها سليمان وكلنا آتينا حكما وعلما رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم سبحانك لما وحنانيك علم لا تنسني ولا تنسني الحمد لله أفضل الحمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وسائر نبيين وصالحين وسلم الموفقني واهدني وسددني واجمع لي بين الصواب والثواب وعذني من الخطأ والهرمان آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of Q&A, questions and answers. Okay, the number to ring is 01274 214 299. I did that without looking, but I'm going to check if it's correct. Here it is. It's 01274 214 299. Okay, must have repeated it often enough, and therefore I remembered it. Alhamdulillah. That's the number. If you've got any questions, you have anything that may have disturbed you, bugged you, frustrated you, annoyed you over the week, and you want to get some sort of Islamic guidance on that or some Islamic advice upon that, then please share. Or it could be just an event that's going on in the public eye at the moment, something in the media, and you just want to seek some advice on that. Anything which is of any nature where Islam can have an involvement, then please do call. Again, it's 01274 214 299. Whilst we're waiting for the calls to come in, as is my normal practice, I go through some of the istiftah, the questions that we have had coming in our Darul Iftah, which is available also on the Telegram channel as well. So for those who wish to join it, can do so. Let's pick up a question which is a little bit kind of COVID related. So let's deal with that right now. And that question is, can parents make objections, okay? Can parents make objections due to COVID-19 for their children who normally volunteer in providing funeral services, which includes bathing the deceased? Bearing in mind, some of those live with parents and some of those are left unmarried and live in their own houses. So, question, and this question has come up before to me directly as well as through our Darul Iftah, is alhamdulillah, we have tulab and talibat, students who study at boarding institutes, Darul Ulooms, and when they study at these institutes, they are, or it's inculcated within them to provide service to the community. And this is a very important characteristic and a very important practice really, because what it does, it starts to embed and instill these virtues and values within students. So it's not just an academic pursuit. Yani they're not just there to study aqaid and fiqh and tajweed and then become teachers and lecturers when they graduate, but rather they're also there to provide service to the community. And one of the key services obviously is when one passes away, and because it happens very rarely in our families, obviously, and also because it's a very emotional time. It's a moment where reality is suspended. So therefore, we are not quite sure what we're supposed to be doing. And obviously, we want to ensure that the last funeral rites that our loved one is getting is done properly. So we may partake in the activity, but we really want guidance and support from the learned body of students or scholars. So we find especially young ladies may volunteer so that whenever there is a deceased in the locality, then funeral directors will have a list of volunteers, and what they will do is they will call those volunteers if they feel they do not have sufficient staff on that day, or they find that the family members aren't getting involved in the bathing of the deceased. Now, I want to give some support and words of comfort to those who lose a loved one, that if they follow the correct procedures of PPE, both donning and removing of PPE, and also ensuring that they follow the guidance of how to bathe the deceased, then there is no harm to them. Nothing will come to them, inshallah. They won't contract the COVID illness, virus, because they will be following those procedures. If they aren't, obviously, then there is always that chance. However, many family members kind of shy away from that. They don't want to do it. So what they do is they contact the funeral directors will then contact these volunteers. So when the volunteers come out, sometimes obviously depending on their size and age, there could be a larger number of volunteers there. So it could be that, if it's a person who's passed away and they later in life, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, then they may be that they're also overweight and maybe even obese. So they will be quite heavy. And moving a dead body around is not easy. And therefore, when they need to get the volunteers, they may get 6, 7, 8 volunteers together. Now, if they're in their own social bubbles, it becomes a little bit difficult now for people to retain some safe distance, and at the same time help each other, assist one another to bathe this deceased. So, and unfortunately, I experienced when I got involved in this last year, 2021, in 2020, when the pandemic first started, I got involved in this because I also saw myself the lack of proper services that funeral directors were providing. So what we have is all these young people, large number, because obviously they tend to be in their late teens, possibly early 20s, and they're now moving this quite heavy body around with maybe even insufficient PPE. So that's the questioner posing that question. He obviously knows it's a good act, it's a rewarding act. He can see the religious significance to it. But at the same time, he's considering his and his family members' safety. So it may be that this chap's daughter is at this institute, and obviously he's concerned that when she comes home, obviously she's now in an extended bubble with those people that are helping washing the deceased, and now she's coming back home and there may be elder family members, her grandparents, for example, who's now she's going to see and talk to and the rest of it. So, but he's kind of caught between two difficult situations. One is the kind of religious rewarding, the religious significance of helping the community, especially at this time of need. And there's great ajr for it, great reward. But secondly, there's also, we are told by the Sharia that we should, protect ourselves, safeguard ourselves. And you can clearly see that there's obviously a significant chance of that not happening, unfortunately. So in response to that question, it is permissible for one to tell the organization that's providing this volunteer service that my daughter or my niece or whoever it is can't attend, or my son, depending on obviously who the individual is, they can't attend because we have an extended family here living together, and obviously they are vulnerable people and they've not had the vaccine yet, and even if they have the vaccine, we know that there's also the possibility that a person can still contract the virus even though they've had the vaccine. So can they opt out? Of course they can. Okay, there will not be any sin upon them if they choose to do that, because at the end of the day they're prioritizing their safeguarding, their safety before the washing of the deceased. Now, we look at the ahkam. Now, when it comes to the bathing of the deceased, that's fardhi kifaya. However, the bathing aspect is only fardhi kifaya by extension from the janazah, the funeral prayer, because the janazah is a fardhi kifaya, because obviously one person can't pray the janazah alone, and it's usually open up to the public. I appreciate during these lockdown, national lockdown in particular, but also the more kind of local lockdowns we had prior to the national lockdown, there's limitations put on those who can attend the janazah. But that aside, we then extend that ruling of the janazah of fardhi kifaya to also the bathing. However, the bathing is actually a responsibility of the family. It is not the responsibility of the community. It only becomes a responsibility of the community if a person passes away and he does not have family members. So let's just say, for instance, a man and his family arrive in this country and they then decide to move back to the country of origin. He decides to stay here and he passes away in an old people's home or a nursing home or something. And when he passes away, then obviously they're trying to find out where his family members are. And obviously they find out his family members are abroad. So now they're stuck. What do? But obviously they will notify the local mosque or the local funeral directors that, look, this person was a Muslim. And they will then contact ulama, and obviously the ulama will then make take steps in order to ensure that the correct procedures, the funeral rites of a Muslim are carried out on this person. But obviously that would mean his family members can't bathe him, so the community will bathe him. In those circumstances, yes, it does become a communal obligation. But in normal circumstances, it is the family's responsibility to ensure that the deceased is fulfilled, or the deceased's rights, funeral rights are fulfilled, their rights at the time of death are fulfilled. Initially, and more importantly, is the bathing and the shrouding. Once that has been done, then the janazah is a communal obligation. As long as we have sufficient number of people attending, then that will suffice. And then when it comes to burial, it does again become the responsibility of the family to ensure the burial. So the person would not be sinful if they told their family members not to attend the actual bathing part. But this, because I can see we're sort of not too far away from the first short break, before I touch upon the topic, maybe I should just elaborate for the next few minutes on this topic itself, which in a more general point is, how do we kind of balance these needs that we have? One is obviously religious significance acts, acts which are obviously clearly of religious significance, acts which we know that we will be rewarded for, not compulsory acts, but acts which are mustahab, or, you know, they're praiseworthy, they're mandub. So these type of acts that we see, but then we have a counter kind of acts or counterbalance or counter argument in that we also need to take care of our safety. So how do we do that? And we've seen that particularly during this pandemic, where we've had to kind of advise the people who attend the masjid to wear face masks. And we've also had to advise that there's gaps left. Obviously, this is medical advice which is being kind of enforced or kind of, I wouldn't say forced upon the community, but enforced upon the community following medical advice that there should be at least 1.5 meters or so, 2 meters distance between people who are praying. And these are all new things, because there is not within our tradition that there should be that level of a gap between the people in the safs. As you probably recall, all those years ago now, it seems so long ago, when we prayed next to each other in the masjid, it's actually praiseworthy to ensure we don't leave a gap in, you know, between us and the next person to our right, and between us and the next person to our left. So sometimes when it becomes matters of safety, then not only do they impact on mustahabat, but actually we've seen that they've impacted on the faraid as well. Clearly they have. We're now going to be in a situation, most likely, that Ramadan will also be Taraweeh in a manner in which, you know, where there's social distancing, which again is not the way we would have Taraweeh. Masajid used to be you know, places where it was, the masajid kind of became alive, if for want of a better phrase, during the month of Ramadan, because we were literally there all day. You know, there'd be some kind of program after, I guess the only time we slept usually is after Fajr until sort of Zuhr, and then as soon as Zuhr started, there'd be a program after Dhuhr, then there might be a short break, and then Asr. Well, you know, hardly anybody left the masjid after Asr. There would be some kind of program, then obviously Maghrib, they would break fast, they'd go home, eat, and then they'd be back again for Isha, and after Isha there will be Taraweeh, and after Taraweeh there may be some kind of program, because Suhoor is not too far away, and then maybe people would make Suhoor in the masjid, or they would come back home, make Suhoor, and then be back again to pray Fajr before they would retire for the night. That's not going to happen now. So, you know, we can see how massively it's going to impact that. So there are faraid acts in which health and safety has had an impact. So clearly we can see that when it comes to acts which are praiseworthy, when it comes to mustahabat, then that can easily also be taken into consideration, and for the sake of the person's safety, for the sake of the family members' safety, that person can opt out. They would have sufficient members in their voluntary group so that somebody else could fill their space in. And those who run these kind of voluntary groups, they should understand, okay? They shouldn't be forceful on their volunteers and say, no, this is a sin that you're doing, that you're leaving this, you should be here. You know, they should understand the person's circumstances and say, you know, make dua for them. Say, no, this is a very good thing they're doing. Not make them feel awkward, not make them feel bad. So obviously you're taking the safety of your family into consideration. That's a rewarding act. You're also thinking about your family. And you know, the famous saying, charity starts at home. So you've always got to think about your family first before we think about those outside of our family. That's not being selfish. That's because the rights of the family precede before the rights of anybody else, because they have numerous rights over us, blood and all the rest of it. So I hope that has sufficiently answered that question from the questioner who asked with regards to the bathing of the deceased. So we are on Q&A. We're not too far away now from taking a short pause, and then inshallah you will join me again. The program obviously is Q&A, questions and answers. For the meantime, I will be going through some questions that I have already has been submitted to our Dar al-Ifta, so I will go through them. But also you have the opportunity to call in anytime. Don't worry, you won't be interrupting me. I'll take your call at a convenient time and then pick up what I was discussing. The number to ring if you wish to call is 01274 214 299. I repeat, that's 01274 214 299. We're here to assist. We're here to help you navigate through unprecedented times, like we've spoke about already, the pandemic, and how you act, certain ritual acts now, we have to conduct them in a different way. But also it could be something that's always disturbed you, perturbed you, which you're looking for an answer. It could be something as basic as a fiqh masala, or it could be something more philosophical, like why is there evil on earth and things like that. Some of the youngsters as well, please do call in. Don't be put off by feeling that, a question is a silly question. No question is a silly question. So any youngsters out there who've got some questions, I stick to the English language so that you feel comfortable to put your question to me. So please, 01274 214 299. Join us again, inshallah. We're going to disappear for a short while, but we will be back, inshallah ta'ala, to be on hand to take your calls and continue with some more answers. Jazakumullah khair.